Destroyer Escorts actually ended up being the most important, successful, and valuable anti-submarine vessel in the United States fleet during World War II. They're credited with sinking some 70 U-boats, 26 Japanese submarines, and they fought in every major battle in the Pacific theater. So they were a very significant force in World War II. And what's even more remarkable to me is the people who were manning those boats. These were mostly teenagers with little or no experience on the water. In fact, some of them told me that the only thing they knew about boats is that the pointed end went first. So they were a remarkable group of teenagers. They were very courageous, and they were being led by their skippers, and their skippers were Ivy League college boys who were, basically naval reserve, and they were more used to being aboard yachts than warships. They were sent out on these novel vessels, destroyer escorts, which were brand new and had never been tested before. The original idea was Franklin Roosevelt in 1940. He recommended that these vessels be built to deal with the continuing presence of the Nazi U-boats in World War II on the North Atlantic. And Winston Churchill warned Roosevelt and America that basically something had to be done to stop Hitler's U-boats in the war before, as he said it, the sea would become America's cage, cutting off all commerce between the United States, England, and Europe. And so the president ordered them built in 1940, but the Navy decided that that was probably not a good idea, so they convinced the president that the scarce resources that were available at that time would be better spent on destroyers. And I think that if you look at the historical record, you'll see that that probably was a mistake. The destroyer escort is sort of a novel type of vessel. It's smaller than a destroyer, around 300 feet, and it had a shorter turning radius so that it could essentially turn on a dime compared to a destroyer. So what they did is they escorted the convoys across the Atlantic, and the convoys consisted of troop ships and supply ships for the war effort. But if they made contact with a U-boat, they could break off and then they could pursue that U-boat. When you look at the record, though, I mean, 70 U-boats, they probably were, without question, the most successful anti-submarine vessel in the fleet. This ship is the USS Slater. It was built in the Tampa shipyard. There were 563 destroyer escorts built in 17 shipyards all across the country. It actually came late in the game, like a lot of them. This is 1944. They did a few escorts back and forth across the Atlantic. And one interesting thing that the Slater did do, the only Nazi submarine, the only U-boat captured by the Americans in World War II, was captured by destroyer escorts. They got a treasure trove of material, confidential documents, actually half a ton from this U-boat U-505, and one of the torpedoes was actually loaded onto the Slater and brought back to America for study, along with the all-important Enigma machine. And that was the code-breaking machine, and it actually was very useful because it came on the eve of the Normandy invasion, and they were able to actually take that off the U-505, bring it back to America, and was very helpful in breaking the German codes. After the war, some of them were scrapped, and some of them were given to other countries as part of President Truman's the Truman Doctrine, which was to provide these type of vessels and other military aid to other countries. So this particular vessel went to Greece, and it was their #1 vessel for a long, long time, and until about 1991, when the Greek government decided they no longer needed this vessel. Fortunately, Mayor Jennings, who's the mayor of the city here in Albany, felt this would be a wonderful attraction on the waterfront, which he was trying to revitalize at the time. And now it's the only destroyer escort still afloat in America in its original World War II configuration.